I've got a story to share with you, and if there's one subject that anyone living in the Philippines is familiar with, it's the issue of communications. I've got a story to share with you. This story is one that seems to repeat itself over time. It started one morning when I jumped on our bathroom scale, comfort room scale, and the indicator just jumped all over the place. It went high, low, it had some weird characters show up, and I immediately realized that maybe, after the scale being a couple years old, it was time to replace the battery. So I flipped the scale over and I looked for the battery compartment, and I couldn't find anywhere or anything that looked like a battery compartment. I looked and looked and looked, and I had no idea where the battery on this scale might be. But I did notice there was a company name and a phone number, Mitsubishi to be exact, which is not surprising because they make everything from water purifiers to vacuum cleaners, electric fans, and of course cars and trucks. So I called the number hoping I could at least be referred to a website or product website, or maybe even talk to somebody that could tell me how to get into the scale so I could replace the battery. A woman answered, clearly a Filipina working at a call center here in the Philippines, and I explained my situation, and she simply responded by, just take it to any Mitsubishi dealer. I explained to her that we had no Mitsubishi dealer or anything like that in our city, and the closest place that I knew of a Mitsubishi dealership was a car dealership in Tacloban. To which she responded, yes sir, a Mitsubishi dealer. And again I responded, but it's a car dealership. And she says, yes po, that's correct, Mitsubishi. So I thanked her for the information and threw the scale in the back of the car so I wouldn't forget it during our next trip down to Tacloban and Leyte. And after finishing that conversation, I immediately began having flashbacks of the difficulty I had in finding taco shells at the local Super Metro grocery store here in Calbayog City. Even though aisle 5 was clearly marked with a sign above the aisle that said taco shells, nobody in the store seemed to know what taco shells were. And every time I recruited somebody to help me search out these evasive taco shells, we would always wind up on the potato chip aisle, standing in front of the tortilla chips. Clearly, taco shells does not translate into Tagalog, Waray, Cebuano, or any other dialect. It's just another typical communications issue. A few weeks later, we found ourselves on the road down to Tacloban on the island of Leyte, where we have our car serviced. It was due for a service and an oil change. And when we got to the dealership, I checked the car in, and I explained to the guy behind the service counter the issue with my bathroom scale. I explained how probably all it needed was a battery, but I just couldn't figure out how to where the battery was located or how to put a new battery in it. He seemed to completely understand my issue and said that they would look at it and have it fixed. No problem. I was feeling good about this day, so we jumped on a jeepney and headed off to the mall to do some shopping. After shopping at the mall for a couple hours, and we visited the Ace Hardware, pick up a few much needed items for the house, had a good lunch, and about 3 hours later we made our way back to the Mitsubishi dealership, only to discover that the entire exhaust system on the car had been dropped, disassembled, and was all laying out on the floor. The scale was still in the back of the hatchback. When I asked the service manager what the heck was going on, I was told that the exhaust system was being changed out and replaced with all new parts per the work order. At this point I was at a complete loss of words, and the only thing I could muster up was, how about the bathroom scale? Is it working? To which the service manager then replied, I'm sorry sir, we don't work on stuff like that. We only work on cars and trucks. I immediately pulled the scale out of the hatchback, put it on the ground, climbed on it, and wouldn't you know, it was working just fine. It was at this point that I realized our car was just all tore up for no apparent reason, and that the scale never really had a battery problem. It was at this moment that I also realized this has all been a bad nightmare, just a dream, and that the 10 milligram capsule of melatonin that I take before bedtime is just way too much. So I'm switching back to the 5 milligram tablets. And we bought another scale, just in case.